tenasi doale tenasi ta gymze tenasi ora ke konla pesa pi ngazo ta shineji ngane ani tongni dogo ta tongni dobe ani shera ta de ne ko ta so 상동 시기 여러 다 tongni dogo ina ani de la tongni dobe pen kare yore pendo kare yore ani tongni doele yu sonam chejo kare chejo sum 라마다 이당 예매도 소다야 소난비 소사야 소사비 전시야 아니 베자다야 순다 기승어마 로사로 어디 균제 텐데 인장수 거 테나스
Okay. So
yeah. Yes. No. Yeah. No.
Okay, so this is a bit tricky because it's not in the English, but in Tibetan it says dena, which actually means like about 20 different things. So this dena means that it means the reason, right? Literally. So it encompasses the fact that in the topic of shine or karma biding, then there is the also encompassing in the understanding of emptiness, right? And the cause or the way to develop that is through this laktong, special insight. So then it goes through the benefits of understanding emptiness or realizing emptiness, and then the cause, which is three aspects. So it's seeing the Lama as inseparable from the deity and making supplications. It's the accumulation of merit, and then it's studying the scriptures, the specific scriptures that will enable you to understand emptiness. So that's what dene means. So we've covered all that last time.
아니 다 제로 모션이 공부 시샤시제 네 도르두지고 다 예우셔는 쉬셔요. 다 도르두지 얘기 있어. 뉴지 틱틱제.
So then the next bit is I shall teach the topic briefly based on the thoughts of J. Rinpoche and Lama Tsongkhapa, but this briefly is kind of going to take a while, basically.
근데 제가 다 제로 모션이 공부 시에 되나 된대 연구요래. 규어로지 동이 더야 그 탑람지여 봐. 내가 명하게 규어니 연구요래. 아니 세주가 당 연선이 비스. 세주당 연선이 비스. 대신이 세주세에 단다 먼저 규매 차도 뭐 아니 지도 실업생기도 지도 실업생기가 아니 세 되게 이 규어들라 세주스 뭐 세주 데 믹스에 제로 모친기 로마 캬바지 싶다 로마 믹스에 나게 다 남바산제를 주다 도다 나시 여러 나게 된다고 자니 제로 모친 순주 순대로 가들라 저시다 비자야 짜지 이수다고 자기스다 와다 제로 모친 순주 순대 제라 거로 제메다디 준진 거로 지도 실생기가 지징산이야 나제 응딩하다고 자기스 아니 제로 모친이 저시다 비자다 상원뒤에 구당 남초에서 남초에 어디서 상마 제를 코로나로 남네니 다 믹스에 로마제 지도 실업생기 믹스에 로마 규메 차도 보더라 규메 무슨 말로 좀 해서 규메스도
규메 공부
소송 어디 디네마 주가지라 아니 주가지 여레스타디로 당연히 금로 제지 거로
Okay. So just to give a bit of a background on what this is being taught, basically there was two main lineages for the pith instructions of Lama Tsongkhapa, or the two main lineage of the special instructions of Lama Tsongkhapa. So there's Tse and Nishimpa Tse Tang.
세규 당
세-
원산유지 원산 야원서 벤제르 무진 구도 당
Oh, okay.
원산유지
So there's Pujing Lama Tomboro.
벤제 군인 당고데
Yeah.
야원서
So it goes through, first lineage goes through Jetson Shirab Singye, and this is the one that is being explained here. And the second one went through the first Panchen Lama. So these are the two lineages of the pith instructions of Lama Tsongkhapa. So Jetson Shirab Singye was a very close or heart disciple of Lama Tsongkhapa, and he had his particular special connection in terms of the tantric teachings or upholding the tantric lineage. And this came about through the... there was one Pechadimin Dewa Shidrak. So Lama Tsongkhapa was reading or giving an explanation of Dewa Shidrak, and then he said, who amongst you will be the kind of protector or the lineage holder for this text? And Jitsum Shirab Singye got up and said, I will maintain this lineage. I will be a protector and establish this text. And so then Lama Tsongkhapa gave him a special kind of transmission and gave him this inner offering blessing. And then he actually went on to start Gyume Tantric College. And this is a little bit of the history of Jitsum Shirab Singye.
아니 되네 다는 가르친 거라나 간산다메 안나서 다 동관이 있어야 될라 아니 간산게 다메다 최고 다메스 디즈니여와 다디시에 다 간산다메 또 안나서 되게 여러 배제나가 이 냠네 시단 그림 봐 똑당 그림 봐잖아 간산다메 당고 최고 다메 질러시고 저 기제 시고요 이제 얘기 교과들라야 아니 다디 첨바시 된세 다디 첨바시 된 시어라 라마 첨바 아니 이담 첨바 닝지 첨바 다와 첨바 다디 첨바시 된
Tawa.
다와 첨바 타마데 다와 첨바 다디 다와 첨야 돼 다와 도야 돼 간서 담에 도간 그런 것이 당고 간서 담에 도단 그런 것이 아니 대 교과들다 당고 라마디 제단당도 돈이도 라마마 대세되니 라마야 보고 그러와 이 라마야 보된 거예요 라마 삼바던 쪽에 다데네 아니 간지야기 최디 아니 지 대화심을 최지야라 저다 닝지 당보 자고 유에서 닝지 공부요래 안데네다 돈이마도 나나 산제 돼요 말에 콜레트 돼요 말에 심지 현시 돼요 말에 아니 랑이 된시도 말에 신이 된시도 말에 대도야라야 중라 퇴바단 삼바디 되죠 대체도 발제용 거를 미담이만 발제로 안 발제도 해야지 아니 이담로 써와다 진짜 어디 시디 내가 배치물에도 이 sabje digdan 거라나네 베미시 되나라니 먼저 삼다에 뭔고요 레스라
So when we look at this emptiness, right, you can break it down into two primary aspects. So you have the two selflessnesses. You have the selflessness of persons and selflessness of phenomena. Now, in terms of practice, it's said that it's better to establish the selflessness, or easier to establish the selflessness of a person first. Now, according to Jitsum Shirab Singye, there's 4 remembrances that you need to have in order to develop this realization of emptiness. So the first one being the Lama, then the deity, then compassion, and then the view. And then the view here is where you establish the selflessness of the person, or realize the selflessness of the person. So we need a Lama, we need a guide, a teacher to help us to develop along the path in terms of study and deepen our understanding, accumulation of merit, and all these things. And then if we want to enter into the Mahayana vehicle, right, and attain the state of enlightenment, we need to develop this strong and powerful compassion. And of course, if we have this compassion and wish to attain enlightenment, wish to benefit others, then we need to establish this view, establish this understanding of emptiness, or we wouldn't have the skillful means to be able to benefit others. And then, so that's the view. And then for the last one, the yidam, there's many obstacles that can come across in your practices and your path to enlightenment. And so for this reason, you need to rely on the deity or the yidam to help clear those obstacles.
제가 무슨 공도서리 단자데 시겨봐도 들어도 시겨에 나라 가사 다음에 당고 최초 다음에 제일 시기도 근데 고물루다 반대 나와타고 그런 아이디어 왔다다 저 공도고요. 저 도하나 숨고요. 근데 막 유버지 단다 길루라 냠이요 말에. 단다디 유버디 제가 단다 겨울무신 아마 세르라 나레스 다리 처음에 티잖아. 마디 쉬는 아디 질로 가되나 하고 세르시 셔라 이제 시대잖아 예 세르시 셔라에 와셔로 오븐이지 열어 이제 지금 시대 다리 좀 마시 티존 되게 네 배제님도 나서 여러분 어디 이제 세르시 얘기 셔라 세르 오븐 제라 질로 가되나 하고 되는 거 이제 숨주도 나 겨울 마시기 먼저다 나 근데 되게 마 주어져와 다리 좀 마시 되기 다 주어 마치 거로다 마 주어 마냥바 거로 일단 길루나나 대요 레스트
Do you can remember when that was?
그래
Okay. So, in this lineage, the Lama Tsongkhapa's lineage, or the Gelug lineage, they always state that it's best to focus on the selflessness of the person first. Now, this is not necessarily something that the Indian Panditas like Nagarjuna or Aryadeva might have taught, but this is something that developed later in the Gelug tradition. And the Dalai Lama was teaching it, so was it the opening ceremony or something? Oh, okay. Right. So there was the opening of the debate courtyard, and at that time, the Dalai Lama was teaching in Sera, but neither of these guys can remember the year, and I wasn't there either, so we can't establish exactly when that was. But at that time, he explained that as the lineage went down through the years, through the Indian Panditas down through the Kadamba into the Gelug tradition, that it adapted, and then they established realizing the selflessness of person first.
다디네 다음에도 맞아요. 근데 단다 길룩 차게 좀 무슨 길룩 마음으로 했어요. 예, 벤질로산 수진. 이 나라 시라에 세워요. 심 당고 심심심심이 반대 생활대로 안데네 아니 심이 되게 주의 도당으로 마셔야는데 근데 다음에 시여요. 이 단다 길룩 마음으로 했어요. 다죠. 배 상원천보래 상원천보 가지고 맞을래요 말디.
Okay, so after the process goes, after you understand or realize the selflessness of the person, then you can establish the practice of the Gelugpa Mahamudra, and this is presented by Losam Churden, and it says it understands the emptiness or the nature of the mind. So this constitutes the emptiness of phenomena. Through understanding this, through this practice of Mahamudra, one comes to understand the emptiness of phenomena. But Geshe-la says this is a big secret, so he's not going to tell you anything about it.
That's a good shake, though. 다디지 딜을 나오다 당보 강산 그 다음에 된라 봐주 순간이 순으로 다데 딜에 당보 강산 그 다음에 된라 봐주 순간이 시에도 다보도 빼지 말라 되는데 그래서 가르라기나 거쳐 말이라 다 가르라기 다니는 가르라기 다 딜이야 딜라고래 낭배기 낭배 따루 플러스 비고 이거래 좋아 다 당보 먼저 이 직접 맞아 그런 거 좀 되고 좀 시죠 봐. 좀 시도 거래. 다음도 도스 상담하는 되고래. 다음도 상말로 먼저 상말로게 미 상말로게 깔레게 보여래. 봐. 저거야라네. 아니 가시에게 가르치도 깔레게 보여래. 메제디 기호용이야. 메제디 세디. this life this lab that you are actually college yaga che pesha se ne chamjang do modern ne kambo zibu jao khala shimbu sa thulo zibu kho ni she ne ga to tem da ga to ah de do se de go ra de ta chi college ya de san chi 이건 저 ne ba thangbo de ro sam da group chi
okay. Okay, so now he says, first, what does it say here? He first discussed how to assign the personal selflessness, or the selflessness of persons. So why do we talk about this first? Well, I guess to give a bit of a background, this is Buddhist philosophy talk, but to give a more kind of ordinary day example, we can get into different groups of people, right? So in life we all have difficulties that we have to deal with, and we're all experiencing difficulties and seeking happiness, right? But how we all go about this in different ways, but it can be put into different groups of people. So the first group of people are looking for happiness for this life, right? So be that money, food, clothing, looking good, or checking out cool stuff, or traveling around the world, experiencing exciting experiences. It's all about the happiness of this life. So people who seek the happiness of this life would be the first group of people. So put your hand up if you're one of these people. Most of us. Well, Kessler's got his work cut out for him by the looks of things.
those delay manzole control 신이시로 manzole control 신이시도 아 리지게 군조레 리지게 가마레 리지게 개요마레
So did so tambo데 kare
군조 세레
Ah, okay, yeah.
지대고 뭐 리지게 가마레 리지게 다 먼저 때 난과이나 다 내신다시 뭐지 난과이나 수수 액션 담을 수수 액션이 야고지 제외이나니 수수는 디디용 거 수수 액션이 도자 제외나 수수로 동해용 거 다 되게 제스도지 다 세대지고라 상담되는 게 내가 지단데 배 드노래 다 나마지 도우선 저 나마만에 직 메다지 도우스라 미카시 직 툭두상으로 미카시 당고 투는데 배 sen다니 올리고 저거 타니 올리고 당고 파스텔가 미카시 배 로망군님들 신나 저거 레용 말에 sen다니 올리고 말에 아다디 가래이나라 가래 가네 중이 아데도 대화질 상담 다 세거는 요 어디 대화담을 때문에 용구요 나마 다디 대화세티 경험하시는 용구들 경험하지 계제세들이 다 경험하지 유나 다 치마지 요래다 나 겨 치마들라 겨워지는 링도 다 둔두로 겨워내는 다 배사사래로 둔두 아니면 당연히 다는 나무에 냐와이다래 아주 하고 뭐 샤시만 양좀 이게 둔두 통과라 나 둔두 겨워내는다 깔래 빼면 것도 배 미드즈 빠고 쉬고도 강의제고도 배 미즈도 내려셔 당 둔두 전에 오면도 당 밀을 겨워내고도 당 밀을 겨워내야 체들 겨워두고도 야고치고도 미즈들 미야고 체제 겨워치면 밀을 겨워내야 되는 식으로 다 되네 추세를 보두고다 다 겨워치면 상담하니 먼저 되게 제 맞으세도 어디 계제들이고 없다
So you need to think about the different possibilities, or think about our situation well, right? So if we actually look at it in terms of like time, actually our lifetime is very short. Like our lifetime, let's say it's 100 years, is a very short amount of time. And, most people believe they're under the control of something, right? Now, whether it be God, a creator God, or karma, or just whatever, like whatever circumstances fall their way, they're still under the control of that situation, right? So from a Buddhist perspective, we believe that whatever actions we create will have a result. So if we create positive actions, then we get a result of happiness. And if we can create negative actions, then we get an unhappy result. So then if we look at our situations in this life, whatever we encounter is the result of our previous karma. So, for example, when we first meet somebody, we might even feel very connected with them and have a very kind of positive connection and feel very happy and like them a lot. But as time goes on, that situation may change and we start to not like them so much, or that relationship can change. And why is that? Why does that happen? Well, it's because of our connection that we had with them in a previous life. And we had many of these connections and many of these karmic actions. And everything that comes in this life comes from our previous life. So everything we experience now comes from our previous life. Which makes us think that, what do we want to experience in our next lives? Now, if we get reborn in the lower realms, right, like as an animal or something like that, then our situation is going to be very difficult and we'll have absolutely no control. Like animals have a lot of suffering. Can be beaten or killed by humans, and they have to constantly face difficulties. So then the thought should arise in your mind that at least I want to attain at least a human rebirth in my next life, so I can avoid the suffering of the lower realm. And so then with this motivation, then engaging in Dharma practice, then people will engage in the practice of Dharma. And then, so for this reason, it gives them a need to practice Dharma. And this is the second group of people.
dine shindu nangwa sanjewe jina di chidi gyawa chima nizon mangaya shidi kunjo sonda kyampo chiya le gyumbe sonya gyawa chu migawa chu chizu lunga ge choba tuzu tamya tuzu zo nyamnen shi jimba tanya chudun sonya tuzu kare shidi gyawa chima milu tuya chidi gyawa chima milu chitoro shi na san kunjo sonda gyapsuto tinde chewe ina di nangwa sanjewa odela nangwa sanjewa
Okay, so this is like the entry point into Buddhism, or being a Buddhist. If you hold to things like you avoid the 10 non-virtues, you adhere to the law of cause and effect, you have refuge in the Buddha and the three jewels, you do practices like generosity and so forth, with the motivation to benefit your next life, and the motivation is very key, then this would be the entry point to say that you've entered the Buddha Dharma, or you're a Buddhist.
That is something. That me jawle 동해도 말한다. 다 하고 보다.
Right.
that me jawle in the 동해 빼만 보더라. 동해 망고도 하면서 동해 나래 동해 가외 동해 계외 동해 치외 동해 아니 수수 고야 뭐고도 좀 말아외 동해 아니 수수 빈자 자외 니도 같이 해도 양 동해 좋아 아니 다도 양 춘도다 데레레 네베 동해 망고 먼저 밀려요. 다 미들 겨내나야 오면 타가 네다 야 오면 아니 네게 다 동해도 상담지 동해기 교대 간에 중도 상담이 아니 맞다 대바지 봐야 되고 간사다 내가 가서 두시에 있는 게 그래 동해기 교 당보대 단질을 되는 거래 다주 배나 마시기로 봐 다지라고 쓰는 마시 계산기 나 드린 게나 집어지기만 따스나는 나타고 zem어요. 어디 단지라고 돼. 단지라고 돼. 또 상무당 거였다. 상무당.
So then, if we look at this suffering as our experience as a human being, well, it's not everything that it's cracked up to be, right? We have to experience a lot of difficulties, problems, and sufferings. I mean, we all know that, right? So, primarily there's the four sufferings of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So those are the main ones, but also we have the suffering of not getting what we want, like wanting something and not achieving it, or being separated from our loved ones, and so forth. So we're constantly experiencing difficulties, problems, and sufferings. So then if you get the mind like, I'm really not into this anymore, right? This is not everything that I want. Then we look at why did these suffering experiences come, right? And if we draw down deeply into it, it's this grasping at truly existence, right? True existence, or this grasping at self, this grasping at self. So, for example, if we hold on to this belief that the person we were yesterday is the same person we are today. So that is an example of the grosser level of grasping at self. Sorry, permanent self. Grasping at a permanent self.
soul killing soul killing soul soul said the pungo than Germany call controversy in Europe. And could you dry your Morocco? Nango Sanji did Yomar, Nassini Pungula Tene, door to English. Another get Shigora, Marchin Jugana, Pungo, Tamalogi to oh, Nalagona, Nanagadu Suyoro. Could you do it with another Yella when you do it? Mother Shigo, oh, Nanagadu, Kalan Yella one later. Could they connection with the Gonyam to you? You did that way in it. You know, Manzo had to go there. Mother and Yella were domain soul said. Did domain not Yabuda? You should. Domain, Lavona de Managado Lavundo. Lavona Jamana, not nice. Lavona, Managay, Marana, the joy of Maraconida. Good news of the Manzo. Noel was new with her. Timeo de la Consangami is Ranjati with Zay to Jashin Tita. Ranjati with Zay Taz.
Okay.
One you go Taz. Or the deep mail de la Consangami, that was the word.
Substantial. So this kind of self, from Buddhist point of view or any point of view, if something arises permanently, it doesn't arise based on causes and conditions, right? So what we say is it would be like we have these aggregates, which was basically the collection of our body and mind. And then we hold on to this idea of a self that's separate from these but somehow controls these aggregates, right? Like a boss, right? Or a king who tells you what to do and you have to do it. So we grasp at this kind of self. So it would be something like the Christian idea of a soul, which is completely separate from our body and mind, but somehow is in charge of everything, right? And it's not connected with our aggregates or our body-mind combination. But in reality, we established ourself based upon these aggregates, right? For example, if we say, like, if our self was not connected with our aggregates, when we hurt our hand, we'd say, well, I'm suffering. Why? Because my hand is sore, right? Like, because I cut my hand or I hurt my hand. Therefore, I'm in pain because my hand is experiencing pain. If, in fact, we did have this separate self, then everything would be a whole lot easier because, like, if your hand got lopped off, you wouldn't have to worry about it because it's nothing to do with you, right? Because you're completely separate from your aggregates. But the reality is we don't actually see things in this way. So when we understand this that the self is established based upon these aggregates, in relation to these aggregates, then that removes the substantially and autonomously existing self. It's weird. It's a weird translation, I know.
Bena chu na la dawa yu na la dawa. So odi dawa du tingira. Ina chu na la dawa yu ma dawa na ma yoro ko. Mundi na ma yoro. Chu 이나 간세 이나가 다와시도 짐부이나 베데나시 마스데 마모네데 컨디지어레라나 풍불라 떼네 주다 풍봉하고 가는라 떼네 딱고 주데 지어레스 아니 나저심을 가르친 것은 풍봉하나 마데베 아니 라모네 조시 지어레스 디다 걸어 삼아 디게 거다 나도 디 슈크첨보이나 아마스 디 또라시 또 슈크첨보이나 아니 란시 디 슈크첨보인 거 란시 디 슈크첨보이나 아니 되자시 안 콘롱하게 창마다 되네요 거 그다음에 뒤에 시기 와서 수바바즈디 란시지리 보스디 당지리
Okay. Okay, so so when we get into seeing refuting the self that exists from its own side, this is getting into into the subtle version of selflessness, right? So to give an example, when we see, for example, we see a reflection of the moon in the water, right? And we see the moon appears to us, but we understand that this is not actually the moon, right? It's just the appearance of the moon. It's the mere appearance of the moon in the water. And in this way, independent on the aggregate, this I, we can establish this appearance or this merely labeled I, right? But what we do, this I that exists as a mere label on the aggregate, we grasp it that as inherently existing. Right, so that we grasp it truly exists, an I that exists from its own side or an I that inherently exists. And in this way we get entangled up in all the kind of carry-on that goes along with that, right? So when we're in this situation, we have like two forces controlling us. So we basically have a supervisor that is, we can call self-cherishing mind, and then we have the boss, which is like the self-grasping mind.
코바델의 동행용제 대하리샤스. 상담이 아니 다 코발레 타베 타와 되는 이유인데 다마 코발레 타베 타와 상담이들라. 아니 다 교팅 남바산예에 다 내제데 교팅 아 대체도 아니 이제 대시게 남 당경어서 동해 코발레 동해용단 동해 율러데 레단 요몬라데네 용단데 군조된 거지. 아니 다대가서 풍부데 동해된 거지. 코발레 거다지. 다단기 간사 다음에 또 간사 다음에 또나 간사 단지 방법이 뭐 데려 고된지 데려 타워 되는 거를 데려 타워 있는 거래. 근데 타워서야 돼 고된래. 이제 우리 디식 남샤 대바식 남샤 냠내 지니들 아니 교팅 대야 라니 지고 네 거를 타워 되는 얘기들라. 아니 다 교팅 다 삼모야 돼 내제 털도라. 어디 남바산지에다 남바산지에 추억이 시도사들 되지 대시게 다 냠내가는 고조용 거라.
Okay. So when one understands this, right, when one understands this situation, then one understands why they were constantly caught up and bound up in the cycle of suffering in samsara, right? And then one gets this wish to be free from that. When one understands, as long as one is caught up in this self-grasping attitude, then one will constantly suffering. Then one mind gets this mind that one seeks to attain liberation for oneself. And at this point, when one develops that motivation, one enters the medium scope or becomes a middle scope practitioner. So there, through the understanding of dependent arising and the law of cause and effect, that all of this situation comes about due to the results of our actions and everything arises in dependence, one develops this wish or establishes this selflessness, realizes the selflessness of persons, and through that they enter the truth of cessation. Through that they gain understanding of the truth of cessation. So their primary practice is to practice these Four Noble Truths. So establish the understanding of these Four Noble Truths in order to attain liberation for oneself, one's own happiness. So motivated by this happiness for self, they attain what's called individual liberation. Or they seek what's called individual liberation.
지 규야고지 밀레 야고 체베이나 밀레 펜도 체베이나 삼보 삼고 체베이나 아니 지 각선한다 체베이나 장고장제 체베이나 도절라 때네 디기용고요 라트고요 다들 마시에 게시에 아니 지 밀라 주 땅이 스스 디기 통달라 밀라 고고 땅 톨라 땅 아니 밀라 자리 잡슈 아니 미메제 톨라 땅 근데 체베이나 디 데버디 그 동에 요만 신기요 다들 랜드 남샤 데이터 남고 산제베기 베지게 디 랜드 남샤라 이즈메나 남고 산제고 가고 싶어 찾아 다디 레디 다디 삼모야고 수수 시에나 아니 수수기 파마 체디기 파마 아니 빈야 나도서 아니 겨 심제 탐제 수수 파마인 바 총마 진영 바데 하고 그 랜드 남샤 겨마지 하고 그러 겨마지 하고 그러 겨마지 하고서 아니 제주 심지다 지난주 참아 진짜 참아 얘기 아마치요 빙에 뽑으신 게임에 켜가다 되게 참아 진여야다 지난 참으러 간서라 근데 이제 아직도 도망가라 그래 침보래 당에 콘솔라 펜도 시고도 콘솔 동네 된는 것도 동네 냥보다 신기래 아니 닝질 남산래 다 닝질 레벨 강에 요말 그 동네의 신기 거리 침보 연말 하고 그러고 아니 내다 대뉴버드 술도 다 상다 봐 콘솔 동네 된는 냥보다 콘솔 하마고 와라 동네 냥 서지 되거든 아 동네에 제어지에 뉴버드 거도 배샤 누가 배샤 그놈도 아니 닝체보로 페미니스트 더 페머스 디레인 펜도데 디펜도문도 아니 파마 빈자 디레인 펜도데 야 멤버의 로로의 샥주시에 그 나서 되는데 되는 민도 다 거와 펜도도 어느 다좀 봐 퀄리티 다좀 보통은 다좀 배 펜도문도 다좀 배기 심지기 레나마 상마신 누구야 말이야 다 쓸려도 다 산제세야 되도 그러 단다 산제 좀 되는데 먼저 펜도도 나 산제라 누버도 땅에 심지 탐지 등을 해야지 나 산제 고마타고 도지 아니 다 대고시 뭐 상무 야신 거죠 라니 지고 상무 거월 타와서 마다마치 심지 탐지에 시디 아니 상무 땅 뒤시 나 산제 고마타고 도 상당 다디 아니 상무 야신 뭐 차서 아니 대라 요청 모시고 다 요청 모스
So this practice, this understanding of dependent arising and the law of cause and effect, is pinnacle to both these small and medium scope practitioners, right? So they have this understanding that whatever they experience comes about through the results of their actions. So if you do positive actions, generosity, practice morality, act with kindness towards others, then this results in happiness in the future, positive experiences in the future. And if you do harmful actions towards others, arguing, fighting, any sort of conflictive actions, then this results in suffering in the future. So this is a basic understanding. This law of cause and effect is a basic understanding of Buddhism. And it's pretty hard to say that you're Buddhist if you don't have at least a basic understanding of this. Right? But then having understood this, having seen this, those, like some beings, have a broader understanding or a much broader motivation. In terms of they understand that through the understanding of countless previous lives, that we have a vast connection to all sentient beings, right? So that every being we come in contact with has been our mothers, have been our brothers, sisters. So we have this connection to sentient beings. And then when we think, oh, it's not just about my suffering, when we see the suffering of others, then we start to arise the state of compassion. But this is not this motivation of compassion is not easy to generate. First, you have to develop this understanding of what causes the suffering, what brings that about, and then you have to understand the connection that we have with others. But having understood this, having had this motivation that you have this connection, you have this compassion to others, then you think, well, okay, I'd like to help them. I'd like to free these beings from their suffering. So then you have a look, well, how can I do that? Who has the ability to actually free beings from their suffering? And, people with a lot of money doesn't completely free people from their suffering, right? People that are like presidents or kings, they don't have the power to take away people's sufferings. Those people that are close, like friends and family, well, they don't have the power to take away people's suffering. Even beings like arhats have a deep understanding, but they don't have the power to eradicate people's suffering or being suffering. So who has this ability? Like only a fully enlightened Buddha actually has the ability to liberate people from their suffering. So then we, based on that, these beings should attain the wish to attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. So then they develop this vast motivation to attain enlightenment for the benefit of all sentient beings. And at that point, we can say that they become great scope practitioners.
어떻게 남바산제베 남바산제베 좀시디 남바산제보다 디센디난 거여라 다 델마다다 딜라다 담보 간상게 담에 되나다 딜라 시제월에 수나면도 당보다 파리단에 또고다 담먹은 강하게 시에디 개발이 시에서보다 아니 렌데 메모때 따와서 주친도지 가서다 주친구단 주팅 최상 다 소나미에 당보도 시험인데 소나미보다 다 남바산제에 최적이 시샤시고 체디고지고 상담하다마체 다 겨치말아야 근데 상담이 계절에온데 교충무슬라 방어서 당이 교충무디 겨치마 미고마트레시기 그다 최진이 들어가고 이 렌데가 남자들 상담 들어와 아니 교딩이 어다 미겨래나 처음에도 땅아 코어들에 타고지고도 상담이 아니 교딩제 렌데 남자 제가 교충무다 교딩이 내가서 아니 렌데기 남자 요 말에 세야게 아니 심리 도로 그래서 근데 렌데 남자 렌데가 이지 tempo 쇼지 니도 그래서 어디 소나미에 당고도 세야게 직디 제단 되어디 레고다
Okay, so this is a brief explanation of the three different scopes or three different types of practitioners, groups of practitioners within the Buddhist path, right? So then we get to this quote here. I was just about to read the Tibetan, that wouldn't help me very much. So first, in English, first reverse your merciless state, meritless state. Next, refute the self. Finally, the one view refutes all. He who knows this is skill. So when we look at this first part here, first reverse your meritless state, this is talking about small and medium scope practitioners, right? So for the small and medium scope practitioners, this law of cause and effect, understanding of this law of cause and effect is very important, right? So for the small scope practitioner, they go beyond thinking about this life and start to think about the next life. So when they start to think about the next life, or how they can they establish benefit in the next life, happiness, or positive effects in the next life, well, it's through this understanding of the law of cause and effect, right? So they believe that if I do positive actions now, I'll get happiness in the future. And for the medium scope practitioner, those who wish to attain liberation, they also rely on this understanding of the law of cause and effect. Then through that, they establish dependent arising, and through that they can understand the basic or the rough gross versions of the selflessness of person. So this first part here, first reversing meritless state, is about removing that wrong view towards the non-existence of cause and effect. So if you have this view that cause and effect, the karma and result action and result doesn't exist, this reverses it. This is saying that first you need to reverse that view.
파르디 다네 도가 다나스 파르디 간산게 다 당긴 건도 간산 다시 해 봐. 간산 다음에 해 봐. 간산 다음에 하고는 가르스나 다 페이지 띄우 딩도 차고 딩데 코에 자와 단지를 와 단지 공기 뉴모인 거는 단지 방구로 세제네. 간산 다음에 또 요데 간산 다도 파르디 다 당긴 건도 간산 해 봐. 마세야디 하나 되면 그 언더 투어지 나한테 팁나 가상 다시 다 먼저 디딩이요 먼저를 열 먼저 줄라 아니 리얼 증거들 먼저 줄라 먼저 다 돈이 무슨 마다서 정말로 열다 돈이 파고 있나다 요 말하면 파고면 이제 유디 나온지 데모로 난게요 일단 돈이 또는 증거요 맞다고 돈이 또 사나로 돈이 또 사나 돈이 또 사나 돈이 시에나 안데스된 인디네스 아니 데 호링지 말다 간다 난그래 가서
난그래 진기마 알아 호쿠소
돈이 마도나 난그래 진그래 인가요
오케이 Okay, so then the next line here, next refute the self. So this is specific to the medium scope practitioner, right? Their focus is to remove the grasping at this inherently existent or truly existent self. Sorry, truly existent self. So this independently established self, established literally under its own power, established under its own power, right? This is the self that they're trying to refute. So basically, when we see a person, then the appearance of this truly existent person appears. It appears to exist. But for somebody who has the realization of selflessness, they don't grasp at that. The appearance is there, but the grasping is not there. But for us, or people who haven't had this understanding, then we have the appearance of the selflessness and we have the appearance of true existence, and we have the grasping at true existence as well. So that's the difference in the understanding.
어디지? 다네 타마다시 군도 가서야지. 다 간사 멤버시 단다 추주당 포바당 빌려요가. 근데 지금도 그래서 단다 랑원에 줘. 나오는 지나 지 템버로 추. 다데 템버로 추주 템버로 야마레 포 템버로 야마레 라위나 아니 추 다음에 다 간사의 신배 추 탐지에 된게 아니 템버로 매워 추 다음에 간사여로 간사의 신배 추 탐지에 템버로 매워 추 다음에 어디 타마디 주 첨부 내가서요 아니 추 다음에 또 그래 추 다음에 또고 돈이들다 추 다음에 돈이디 아니 추 다도 창마 당연히 디 창마 도로 가서 그래 집어 간사단지 도로 그래 추 단지 다 보증이 말아 증이 말해 마지막에 이자 아니 데다 타마 다시 군도 와서 군도 짐바 군도로 그래서 짐바 군 단지 간사 단지 추 단지 간사 단지 추 단지는 짐바 신다도 되자 시당 컨트롤도 제로 거 러시아고 짐바도 남산도 거 자와로 먼저디 매도 디 프린팅지 자와디 루트 제샤로 루트 제샤도 브랜치 디 감루도 어디나시고 군도 쓰다 짐바 군도로 그래서
Simple kundo.
군세 탐제 말 군세 탐제 all
Yeah, all. Kundo reverse, right? Okay. So then the next line is finally the one view refutes all, right? So this is talking about stopping the grasping at the self of phenomena, right? So this previous line was to do with the self of the persons. Now we're talking about the selflessness of phenomena, right? So when we see or when we stop grasping at phenomena, external phenomena like a phone or a cup or whatever it might be, as not existing from its own side, then this is what we call the emptiness or selflessness of phenomena, right? So when we give up this grasping at phenomena, actually, I can't read my notes, so give me a second. Okay, sorry. So when we stop this two types of grasping, so it's the grasping at self and the grasping at phenomena. So we understand the selflessness of persons and understand the selflessness of phenomena. Then naturally all the suffering dissipates, right? All our suffering immediately kind of disappears and cannot come back, because it's like if we cut the roots of a plant or a tree, if we destroy the roots, then naturally the branches and the leaves and everything else dies away. So this is the analogy that we use. So if we have a clear realization of the selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena, then we've gone beyond suffering completely.
강기시 개발인수도 다 근데 신이디 개발했다. 개발문에 되겠다.
So anybody who understands that is real onto it, basically.
저는 개발 자니도는 디신 그랬다.
So if you want to be real smart, then sort this out.
나 시바 따라서 내가 나와도 내가 기부 친구나 기부 딩디고시 파도 강산다치 타마군다고시 아니 다들 찍도 말로다 다 찍도 고르는 거. 다 찍도 로그다 되어 시바 따라서 내가 매워도 따와서 기부 친구 가서 스톡 파도 간상 다당 파마 쳐지다 도 그림 다 냠네 칠심에 맹아서도 냠네스도 수수 practice야 냠네서고 맹아서도 내 등기시에 뭐 동바선제 준비인데 공부도 아니 제일 멋진 다 단다서 마마pan제 맹아디 아니 툼바라 아니 제바레스타 디 에다고란 베 트래디션 다다 유에스타 간다 디나시 지제 아니 제레스 못다
Okay, so basically the next bit is what we've already talked about. So we're just going to read it out. So this accords with the instruction concerning the order in which you should carry out this practice. In the small and medium scopes, you must refute such views as regarding the cause and effect as non-existent. Next, you must refute the personal self, and finally, the self of phenomena. So it's not quite clear here. So when it says this accords with the instructions, this is this pith instructions or instructions from guru to disciple that went down the lineage from Buddha down through to Nagarjuna, down through to Lama Tsongkhapa, and then went down the lineage. So that's the menag or pith instructions. I'm going to move this microphone. Yeah, no, I think so. It should be better.
Oh, this is. 다 식타고들 뭐 용도다.
Oh, good. This will be fun. So yeah, it's going to get even more tricky from here on out.
다음에 이거가 미주다가 처음에 양라가 다음에 이스는 그래. 간사가 다음에다 쇼를 미라 미주 다라 처요 말했으라가. 그게 내 건서 빼셔네 거. 디 간사 다음에 제가 주제 아니 네 탭디 쳐 다음에 제가 다 퍼버디 다 제가 다시 다이 지거래 내가 도나 간사 다음에 차로 내 내가 도나 쳐 다음에 차로 거라 다 퍼버디 주제에서 도나 그 주제디 간사이 봐 간사 다음에 차로 퍼버디 탭에서 도나 쳐 다음에 차로 그래서 미주 다디 지금이야 말아 예스라고 왔다.
All right. This is going to be fun. Okay. So there's two types of selflessness, right? So there's selflessness of persons and selflessness phenomena. But what we call the self, actually, according to the Majjhimika Prasangika, what we call the self. Oh, no, I wish I had 3 hands for this. But anyway, what we call the self, so the phone is the self, and then we have the cup, which is phenomena, and the pen, which is person, right? So this object, the self of persons and the self of phenomena, the self regarding those two is the same. Right? There's no difference. But there's a difference between phenomena and person, right? But self of person is the same self as for self of phenomena. Okay? Yeah, so this says here, there is no difference between the non-existent selves dealt with in the doctrine of the two selflessnesses. It's a good thing you explained it, because I don't understand it.
퍼워디 주조에서는 간사 다음에 차로 퍼워디 대회에서는 저 다음에 차로 찍거디 가자디 찍거래 가자 찍거래.
So the object to be refuted is the same. So this is the self that's to be refuted, and if it wanders over here to the book, then it's the object of the selfless, the self of book that needs to be refuted. And if it wanders over here to the person, right, then it's the self of person that needs to be refuted, and the same for the cup. And whatever it is. So it kind of can wander around, and it's interchangeable between all the different phenomena, because the object to be refuted is the same. Not that easy, right? Don't worry about it. Plenty of time to think about it. Just think about
it. 세상다 다음에 니요로 가사 다음에 쳐 다음에 다 컨트롤 알레 다음에 니고나 하면은 뇌가 간대 하고 그랬더니 아요야 다 디레 네 배제나를 직 타고 시기도 다디 삼모디 가르당어서 당고 나나서 당 근데 하나서 나 전화도 단데 배제 연구하러 봐 마케지 시기하러 봐 어나데 계제 연구해 나 계제 연구해서 나나 세스도 대상다 당고 대상다 될 삼모 제가 당기지 라야라 양가지 라고다 양가 립다 네 하면 나네 가고 싶어요 나 아서 나 된다 계제 시기 나 전도 계제 연구해 와 가서 지금 여러 왔네 나 지부도 나 지우민도 나 야고요 나 도자요 나 제고요 나 넘버 도자 여러 와 데리 당고 데 삼다 데 삼다
Right. So when we're talking about the selflessness, right? If you want to get into that, first you have to understand this concept of this I that we have, right? So when we go around, we're constantly going around and saying we're doing stuff, right? Like I'm listening, I'm talking, I'm happy, I'm unhappy, I'm blah, 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 blah. And it continues like this, right? But the point is, if you don't understand that I am, like, thinking, then you're not going to be able to understand any of, or have any understanding of selflessness until you first recognize that.
데라 타니에 대병아
Okay.
타니에 대병아들이 요레스 맞아 요러 마기고 요러 마도자 요러 마야고 요러 마도자 요러 마링고 요러 마튼데 상마 요러다 맞아 티 요러 티 타니에 대 요러 티 타니에 대 요러 마 요레스다
Okay. So this merely imputed I, or what's referred to as conventional self. So this is the I that we can say, I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm going. This exists, and so it's a conventional self. This is fine. We're not trying to say that we don't exist at all. That I exists. This conventional I exists.
다 삼로디스탄드라 삼로 마데데스 삼로틱스탄 마데스탄 하디 나데 가와도 제더라 마데 근도 상단데 와 네 수고 네 라고요 네 라고다 네 강보다 네 고단 저와요바데 하고도 템바데 가서는 네 고나나 나 너도 가르다 네 고나거든 라고 아니 요 마치기도 네 라고 치기도 내 미치기 내 추지분 아서 마시오 치기도 가서 네 라고 치기도 라고도 네 라고다 나라야 저와요바데 누가 대도가 대요다 나다 네 라고라 저와요 나다 네 라고라 저와요다
Okay, so then you need to think a lot about this I and how does it exist, right? If we've said that it exists, how does it exist? Well, we're constantly talking about, for example, my body, my head, my hands, my feet. So we can clearly see from this that this I has a connection to our body and mind combination, right? Our aggregates. So, and it's connected because we say, I've got a headache, right? When our head hurts, we say, I've got a headache. Or if we burn our hands, like spill hot water on our hands, we say, my hand is burning, right? So we can clearly see there's a connection between what we regard as ourself and our body and our mind.
세상 내가 먼저 다 남바산 예배 수고 공부라고 라 수고 공부 강과 라과 고 닝도서 수고가 수 제주 주로로 제대로 수고 공부지 다 공부 부모가 시에고 당연히 다 때때 가시 돌아 삼도되다 나 저 되지 데라 저요 하고도 나다 내 수고 공부라 저요 하고 왔다.
Okay. So first one of what we're talking about here is our form aggregate, right? So Buddha taught that this thing that makes up a person is this collection of these 5 aggregates, right? And when we understand our connection to our physical body, then we understand our connection to what we refer to as the form aggregate.
다들 먼저 feeling로 소화를 연화적으로다 emotion that 인상 깨닫지 모르고 emotion feeling이다 간다라 아니야 같이 emotion 가면 서 아니 excitement 여러 excitement 대시나 excitement 시우체 아니 미디 칼레 디즈나 아니 다 excitement 걸로 그러 당고 싸워 갈래 excitement 쇼여라 야 칼레 excitement 라로 그러 상모 소화래 소화 This is soil bungo.
Right.
Mother soil bungo dog.
Okay. So then the next one is our feeling aggregate, right? So this could be referred to as our emotions. So, for example, we're constantly going through a plethora of different emotions. And, for example, one might be excitement or some sort of joyful connection or excited connection. And when we first meet a person or an activity or engage in a new activity, it can produce a lot of excitement. But as we kind of hang around with that person more, then they get more and more boring, or the thing that we do gets more and more boring, right? And then we've got this bored feeling. So, but that's still a feeling, right? So these feelings, this is what's referred to as our feeling aggregate. Okay, then we have the third aggregate, which is called discrimination. So this is our ability to basically discern things. So we can say things are good or bad, right? For example. And that's a discrimination that we're able to make. Long and short, near, far, I mean, there's thousands. But, right, so your mind makes this determination or discrimination to determine that something's good or bad, long or short. And that is called the aggregate of discrimination. So it's a mental aggregate. Okay. So then we come to our consciousness aggregate, right, which is basically our mind. And we're constantly saying, my mind, my consciousness. So we can see that we have a connection to this aggregate of consciousness as well. Okay, so then we have what's referred to as the compositional factors. So anything that's not all the other basically rubbish that's not these other four is considered our compositional factors. So yeah, Geshe says this is like a big old rubbish bin that you can throw all the trash in. I've never heard it described as that before, but so he says you should throw away all your negative emotions in this way. But now he's got recycling, so maybe you throw them away, but they keep coming back.
Compassion, and then the concentration to some.
Okay. Right. So you got to recycle only the good stuff, right? So compassion, concentration, all these positive things, right? So basically you want to throw away all the garbage and recycle it into the good stuff, right? Right, okay, so this is a basic illustration of the eye. So we have these 5 aggregates, right? And independent on those 5 aggregates, there's the mere imputation of self. That is how this conventional eye exists. Right? Okay. So the first type of wrong view is this holding this eye to be something that's separate from the aggregates and kind of controlling them. But in a way, that gives us a separate. If that's actually the case, that means that we are actually separate from reality. Right? If that were the actual case.
디가는 더 투 말이.
Right. So you have to think about this first. Right? Because if you don't clearly think about this and have a good understanding of this, then trying to think about all the other understandings that follow from it is not going to be possible.
데데나는 망고 신야예요. 망고 신야로 망고 시야예요. 그래서 담보 수수 수고 공부 말한서 제가 디중한서 예 전만이샤 류 전만이샤 초 전만이샤 심 전만이샤 최 전만이샤서 진짜 베이직으로 하면서 제가 먼저 난다디 타이완 타로와다 저저 전만이샤 시야도 저번이샤 the mindfulness for mindfulness body 제가 담보 수수 수로다고도 안데 저 안데 심 안데 최 데이터 수수 담보다 두수 담보 데리 가서 그래 동번이 시야게 맞아 베지
Okay, see food this shit career?
시말 나나나 공부마
No, the mindfulness.
저번이 시야시
Japanese shit.
저번이 시 any body feeling and mind phenomena
Ah, okay.
인지 this 가가지고
So then we need to take a look at also this practice of mindfulness, right? And when we look at this, we need to look at mindfulness in four aspects. So we have mindfulness of body, mindfulness of feeling, mindfulness of mind, and mindfulness of phenomena. So we need to establish these four types of mindfulness.
That did this is a world that
Right.
하나 말하면서 나도 장모님도 라고 했다. 나가 레바 요라고 레바 프랑 레바 요 간다 하고도 와. 상황하고 다다. 네 레바도 신기해 말한다. 간다지. 나라 쓰고 갈 기도 거래. 이나 안되지 하고 문도 단다.
So first you need to check your body, understand your body, right? So, for example, we all go on about our brain and how awesome our brain is, but how do you actually know your brain is there? How can you actually check that your brain is there, like firsthand? I mean, you can shake your head around like this and maybe hopefully it'll pop out your ear or something, but apart from that, how do you actually know that there's a brain there?
It's not that the person. Oh, my mirror. Me, you say she me in the middle level with your
So,
my me basically me na level with your
so we all go on like, oh, we say I'm a person, but there's no actual evidence to support that. If you're a person, you actually have to have a brain. So there's plenty of people around who don't have any brains.
Zabuling denana yorta. The mix research in your models and research in your yorta. Yama Perla Yora, Pearl Junior, Jawgone Tuba, in the time Yadroa. Chamdo on Kambalum water, the music like the Omar, gay in the Omar. Togodona and the show, dinner Chidan Luna, and Towajana, they were, they tell the Omar. Goyomar. Okay. In the time Yazo, Namdana, Koran tour meeting.
Do you got the Surah City?
Kundin Tuba, 6 Lama.
Okay.
6 Lama history in the
Right. So,
yours. Now they're yours.
The sixth one. Anyway, so in the history of the sixth Dalai Lama, there was one time when he was in Kham, which is part of Tibet. It's not a suburb. What's the word? A province. It was in Tibet. And there, when he was there, he met like a dude without a head. And the guy was like, when he was hungry, he'd just like smack his stomach and people would shove food down his throat and water down his throat. So yeah, apparently there was a headless man in Tibet.
I think the Celia, there's some book, I think, I'm not really good for us. There's some book in Western, there is some doctors say, oh, Brand already dead in no brand red then people don't have brand, you know. Instead people like that. And took them wrong, also took them.
Right.
Yeah, man, never she said. You know,
Okay.
me dead. The mirror.
Mm.
Mangoya, some
Yeah.
Mangoya.
So there's examples. So what he was referring to is like people are brain dead while they're still a person, and then there's also this death meditation where the consciousness, you know, they
Dead meditation like you are, man.
so
Dead sana meditation, you man. Took them,
what would you say? Took down?
took them, the
Meditation on the clear light of death.
Took down? Do you guys know?
yeah,
Meditation on the clear light of death.
Okay, yeah, that's good. Meditation on the clear light at the time of death.
What's in there?
That's good. Okay. So in that meditation, the people are, these beings have no connection with their brain, but you still can't say they're not people, right? They're still human.
I met the brand research professor Jacob. He researched, and you know, some people left brand all dead, you know, brand all dead, not left red all dead, not working. And then they said there's some music, the people listening music, and lots of they put music, and they first put the finger use. And then some of them got this, and the new brand become. He's famous in Auckland, he's New Zealand. Look, those things are raw. Modern sound is proving it. And he told me, before people don't believe him, this is very, very quiet. And he put this reason. He already have now the facility, especially branch in the university. Already, I've been there. Brand bank, and he's brand bank. He showed me his friend. And now they said brand and silly no need here, some brand. Brand something go there. Brand definition last are zero.
they changed the definition of brain as it suits them.
Delay. Just answer that the trail rather our sons and now you will the decision. 다 네 초와 수수 초와 심 초와당 나도 저 가르도 지난 망보지 이모션 government 이모션 빼고 이모션 수수 experience here 미세하고 이모션 practice here 와야 텐지 아니 네 negative emotion 주 간에 되는 중도 와그 유진 간의 중도 이모션 government 아니 그 유진데 가고라 유지 가고라 positive emotion 초월 상담 근데 심신야 백하고요. 심신야. 심신야 가고 있는 모든 사람들 심신기요 말아. 아니 배샤하는 거는 늦어라. consciousness level 되어 이제 심미지 심디 시기면 알아. 이 consciousness level 되어 이제 이 시고 알아. 제가 디 level 되어 이제 미그 되어 아는 데 시고 미지. 아니 딜 되어면 이게 심지 시도 못 하잖아. 제가 심신야에 걸려요. 상황부터 해요. 상담. 예 심 당하죠 그래 유명시 아니 예 나게 콘로요래 되자요래 마게 요래 아주 당하죠 그래 유명 상담 아니 다나 신이다 요라 당고 대신 거라 당하디 다 당고 베직데 다 계산하게 나다 드링하래 저 그러더라 대상다 계산하여라 yesterday 마 today 나 저 그러더 당고도 상담은 지구지 그냥라고 지고 지구래 계산아 들으나 지구지 그냥 처음이지 상무대 내 겨와스도 다 겨와 간대도 겨와 간대도 아니 상무대 마시고 아니 도스 당고 믿다고 하세요 나 믿다고 하고 아니 되네 나 다음에 라고디 하고 완전히 되지 아니 내 그래 도스 동반이 상담다야 돼 당고 베이직 도스 당고래 지금 유연을 때내 총 아니 계산 액션이 하고 있는데 대응할 기부도 계산 액션이 하고면 가지는 기부면도 세야도 상담은 말하는 데일리 라이프나고 빼줘도 아니 수수 뒤에 액션이 practice 님도 해야 그거 그래서 시험에서 템나라 시 아니 배 상담 로가샤리 아니 로망고 난과시에는 셈라 교단 통문으로 그러나다 이제 가고도 하시나고 이제다 직 뉴뉴 시험에는 아니 데라 상로망고 당 수수 experience 상담 samma mongo tana 아니 내 직도도 배 지고 사와요. 직도도 칼라디 로 피자디 직사제 야고 소잖아 아니 그 트와시 담으려 그러라. 지시 트와로 오늘 브레드 트와로 오늘 올리브 오일 트와로 아니 마시룸 트와로 담으려 요라고. 야지 서서히는 믹스하잖아요. 그걸 좋아요. 네. 사무대 땅.
Okay. So then, once we establish that we have a connection to aggregates such as our feelings and mind and body and so forth, then we need to think about it. The point of this is not to stop things like emotions, right? Because in order to stop emotions, you basically have to stop cause and effect, right? Because all our emotions come about from causes, and so we're not here to try and stop producing emotions. It's more about understanding them, right? So even what we might consider negative emotions, if you're actually able to understand them and see how they come about, what is the cause for them, and then you can actually start to work with them. So then they can actually become something that's not just a hindrance, but actually can be something you can work with, right? And then, also understanding the mind is very important. But this is something that's not that easy because even modern scientists now, with all the technology they have, haven't really been able to grasp onto this idea of the mind, right? They've analysed deeply into what the brain is, but this is quite limited because, they can understand how the sense consciousnesses work, right? Like, in a way, like how the eyes, ears, and so forth work. But other than that, this idea of this mental consciousness and deeper into the mind, they haven't really been able to understand this, right? So then they can't understand clearly how things like attachment and anger and all of these things arise within the mind. And of course, then they can't understand anything to do with this idea of selflessness, right? But when we want to look at this idea of selflessness, the first thing we want to look at is this idea of non-permanent self. So, for example, we look at the person we hold on to what we were yesterday and then the person we are today. And when you first look at it, you might think, well, there's no real difference. There's no difference, right? But when you actually analyse a bit more, look into it a bit deeper, then you can see, okay, there's some small differences. There's some changes between the person I was yesterday and the person I am today. And when we get an understanding of that, then we start to get an understanding of the selflessness of persons, right? And then we start to get a basic understanding of selflessness. And also, again, when we want to look at the emptiness, then first of all we need to look at the law of cause and effect, right? Because that's how you start to understand. If we understand that positive actions bring about, virtuous actions bring out a result of happiness, and non-virtuous actions bring a result of unhappiness, and then we combine this into our daily lives and our practice, then we can start to develop, right? And some people might have read a lot and have a lot of maybe intellectual understanding of Buddhism, but even though they might have been Buddhists for a long time, they can't really bring about any big change in their mind. Whereas other people, they might not be particularly well versed in terms of being a scholar, but what they do understand, they're able to implement it into practice, into their daily lives. And then you can actually see a big change in their mind, right? I guess you use the example of pizza. Like you can have this very small piece of pizza, but if you actually taste it and savour it, then you can say, oh yeah, there's onions and gherkins and whatever else is on there. You can taste it. But if you're the kind of person who just grabs a whole pizza and wolfs it down, then you don't actually taste anything, right? So it's like this. We need to actually implement things into our practice.
Oh, that is how.
Okay, so we'll stop here. So traveling genie did your body, Sangesh to me, Joko Lam Takshin.